Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for Dana White's Contender Series. This is Season 8, Episode 1. And for those that don't know, I do a video like this every single week for every season on Dana White's Contender Series. You can see the past seasons up on my channel, make predictions for every fight from a betting standpoint. And then at the end of the show, we'll craft up a Degen Parlay based on those picks. And hopefully we'll hit a few, but if not, either way, we're gonna have some fun this season. Let's get it started. And we're gonna get things started in the light heavyweight division with Bruno Lopes taking on Mikheil Sazhiniani. And this one will start on the Lopes side. You guys probably recognize that name because he fought on last season of Contender Series. He was actually the biggest betting favorite of that card, and he got knocked out inside the first round by Brenson Ribeiro. And that's the story with Lopes, right? Like, the skill set is certainly there. He has a solid ground game, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He can crack on the feet. He's the former LFA light heavyweight champ. He's the former Jungle Fight light heavyweight champ as well, and he seems to have a pretty well-rounded skill set. Where he struggles is defensively on the feet. He's very hittable. He struggles defending the jab, and I just don't trust his wrestling ability. So even though he has a good grappling game once he gets it there, I don't fully trust him to be able to get in those type of spots, especially against somebody like Mikheil Sazhiniani, who's going to have a clear power advantage on the feet. 12 of his 13 wins have come by knockout. All but 2 of them have come inside the first round, and he's very explosive. He moves very well for the light heavyweight division. He's very flashy, very explosive, as I mentioned, and I think he has the power to hurt Lopes on the feet potentially. Where I worry about Sazhiniani is that his defensive grappling is not very good. So he's going to need to hurt Lopes early on the feet. He has been training with Merab Dvalishvili. He fights out of Georgia as well, so he has that connection there. So hopefully he's shoring up the wrestling. I do think just because the lack of defense on the Lopes side, Mikheil has a good shot to hurt him on the feet early. So we're going to go with Sazhiniani by knockout. That's the official pick, and he's going to kick things off in the Degen Parlay. So we had a couple last-minute changes on the card, so John asked me, Don Kelly, to come in and let you know about these short notice replacements. So for starters, we had Ernie Juarez. He was set to face Icaro Brito. Brito had to pull out due to visa issues. So now we're getting Jose Delgado on just 11 days notice. Now what's interesting here is Jose Delgado is already a sizable favorite, at least on the books that have lines out there, and I get why he's getting a ton of respect. This guy's a 7-1 prospect fighting out of Arizona. He trains at the MMA lab. He made his LFA debut, his last fight out last month, and won by first round knockout. He kind of has like a budget Brandon Royval style. His striking looks very similar. He fights with his hands down, but he's constantly very aggressive, moving forward, will switch stances and fight comfortably from both stances, landing a ton of leg kicks, and in the clinch, he's got some very powerful hooks and some sharp elbows as well. Now, the concern with Delgado is the defensive grappling, because that one career loss, it basically came when he was just out-grappled the entire time. He also got rocked in that fight as well, but basically just got out-grappled for the majority of the fight, and that was the only time in his career that he went 15 minutes. So that's a concern anytime you see a sizable favorite with legit grappling holes. It's going to give me some hesitation, especially considering most of these people are unproven Contender Series prospects. Now, on the flip side, Ernie Juarez, he's a 7-0 undefeated prospect. He's the former featherweight champ over in A1 Combat, Uriah Faber's promotion, and he seems to have a pretty well-rounded skill set. He's a training partner of Chelsea Chandler. He can mix it up on the feet. He's not really a super technical striker, but he's willing to bite down on the mouthpiece, move forward, make it dirty if he needs to. And one of the main positive things is we have seen him go to that wrestling in matchups where he does have that advantage, and I think he'll have that advantage here. But ultimately, I'm going to side with Delgado. I just think he's a much cleaner striker. I expect him to be very aggressive moving forward, and I just think he's going to land the bigger shots on the feet, because Juarez, despite having the wrestling advantage, I don't fully trust him to come in with that game plan, and he's just very hittable defensively in some of the striking exchanges. So I think Delgado has the potential to potentially have some bigger moments on the feet. So it's one where if he's going to be a huge favorite, it gives me a little bit of a pause, but I am going to pick Delgado. Delgado by decision is the official pick. And next fight up in the middleweight division, we have a really fun matchup between Wesley Schultz and Mansur Abdul-Malik. We'll start on the Schultz side. This is a guy who comes from a collegiate wrestling background. He wrestled at the University of Wyoming, and he's a 6-1 prospect, previously fought over in LFA. His sole career loss came against former Contender Series alum Dylan Butka, who got a win on last season of Contender Series as an underdog, and primarily he was taken down and out-wrestled in that matchup. And I think that's key here, because even though Schultz wrestling offensively is pretty solid, and I would expect him to be the better submission grappler in this matchup, in terms of the wrestling, defensively, I think he's going to struggle, especially with a guy who's so powerful like Mansur Abdul-Malik is. And Abdul-Malik is a 5-0 undefeated prospect. He also wrestled collegiately at the University of Maryland. He also wrestled for a year at Wyoming Seminary, which is a place close to me, back in high school. And he's very, very solid. His power cannot be understated. All 5 of his career wins have come inside the first round. Now, most of them have come against low-level competition, so take that for what it's worth. We did see him rocked in his professional debut, but he fought through it, ended up getting the finish. So I think it's clearly going to be a step up in terms of the level of competition, but I think because of the power and the physicality, I'd expect him to be the better wrestler in this matchup. I give him just about all of the finishing upside while the fight does play out on the feet, and because I think Schultz can be taken down and controlled, I think Schultz would probably need to pull off some sort of submission in a scramble or potentially off his back, and I just don't see that happening here. I think Abdul-Malik is going to stay safe in top position and eventually earn a finish on the mat. So we're going Abdul-Malik by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our next matchup in the flyweight division as Kavanagh takes on Tuan Ho. And this is a really fun matchup. I actually think both of these guys are very exciting prospects. We'll start on the Kavanagh side. He's the protege of Brad Pickett, former UFC fighter. He's a 6-0 undefeated prospect fighting out of England, and he's fought over in Cage Warriors promotion. 3 of his 6 wins have come by knockout, and he's a very well-rounded fighter. I'm very excited about this kid. I think he reminds me a lot of Gene Matsumoto, who we saw on last season of Contender Series. Just a very well-rounded skill set, fights smart, very technically sharp on the feet. He's got nasty leg kicks. He switches stances repeatedly and is very sharp with those leg kicks. He's also very good at managing his boxing range. You know, he's good at landing his combinations, but then also getting out of the way before his opponents are able to return. And he does have some solid power for his size. The last thing I'll say about him is the takedown defense is on point as well. So he forces these opponents to strike with him, and that's where he gets the better of the exchanges. Now, on the flip side, Tuan Ho is another undefeated prospect fighting out of Vietnam, and he's spent his career over in LFA, so he's probably faced a little bit more solid in terms of the competition that he's faced to this point. But I think Kavanagh is just going to be more technically sound, because what Ho brings to the table is he's very aggressive, and he does have power for the flyweight division, but he swings very recklessly on the feet trying to land that power. And in terms of the grappling, he's very aggressive going for submissions, but that usually means he's losing position in grappling exchanges as well. And this is just a spot where I think they're just kind of going to meet in the middle and get very aggressive with their striking. And Kavanagh is just much more technical, much more measured, especially as the fight goes on. I'd expect him to get the much better of those exchanges, particularly with those leg kicks. I think he could potentially hurt Ho's movement with those kicks and eventually get his hand raised. So we're going with Kavanagh by decision. Wouldn't be surprised at a knockout, but I'm going to say it goes 15 minutes, not without a lack of excitement, though. Kavanagh by decision is the official pick. And the other short notice replacement, we have Meng, who was scheduled to face Islam Dulatov. Dulatov had to pull out, so now we're getting Rami stepping in on just a couple of weeks notice. This guy actually hasn't fought for nearly 2 years, but he trains out of MMA Masters in Florida. He comes from a high-level kickboxing background. He's a former Muay Thai champion, and he holds a black belt in Taekwondo. He also holds a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but his grappling doesn't seem to be all that great. He's actually been submitted all 3 of his professional losses, and he has a loss to Issa Isakov, who lost to Medeiros on last season as a sizable favorite of Contender Series, so I know you guys will recognize that name. But he seems to be a very good striker, sharp leg kicks, powerful body shots. He rips the body in combination as well. And on the flip side, Ding Meng, honestly, I just don't think is very good. He seems like a regional jobber. He's got a ton of fights on the Chinese regional promotion, a ton of finishes, but he's also been finished a bunch himself. He does have some power on the feet, but he seems like he's susceptible to leg kicks, and he's not much of a grappler. And I think if you're going to fade a guy like Hamad, I think you want to do that with somebody that actually does have a little bit of grappling chops and that is willing to bring the fight there. And I don't expect Ding Meng to do that whatsoever. I expect this fight to play out on the feet, and I just think that's going to favor the better striker in Rami Hamad. I have concern with the short notice and the long layoff, but in a fight that I think plays out on the feet, I'm going to take the decorated striker who I think is going to have the bigger moments, and I just trust him a little bit more, especially if we're going to get a nice dog price. I think it's basically an easy click on the Hamad side. We'll say it's Hamad by TKO. That's the official pick. So quick recap, guys, for the Degen Parlay, we're going with Lane Kavanagh in the first fight of the night. I just expect him to be the better, well-rounded prospect, the cleaner striker, and to get his hand raised. In the second fight of the night, we're going with the newcomer on short notice, Jose Delgado. I worry about the takedown concerns, but I do think he's going to have the bigger moments on the feet. I'm going to go with the damage, and it's going to be Delgado. In the third fight, we're going with the underdog, Sazhiniani. I just think this is a fight where you're going to give me big plus money on the guy that I think is the more powerful striker against somebody that we know has shown deficiencies in the striking defense and has been hurt. He has flopped as a big favorite in the past as well, as recent as last season. And I just think this is one where it's basically going to be a high variance coin flip type of fight. Whoever can get off on their game plan, I'm going to say it's the Georgian underdog here. We're going to go with him in the third fight. In the fourth fight, the other newcomer underdog, we're going with Rami Hamad against Ding Meng. I'm just not a believer in Ding Meng. I think that was a setup fight for Dulatov, and now that they're bringing in somebody else, the market is treating this like Ding Meng should be a big favorite. I disagree. We're going with the better striker and the underdog in Rami Hamad. And then rounding things out for the Degen Parlay, we're going with the big favorite in the main event, our guy Mansur Abdul-Malik. I just think he's the much better wrestler in this spot. I think he's way more powerful, more finishing upside as well, and I think he gets his hand raised. So that's going to do it for the Degen Parlay. First week of Contender Series. We got 9 more weeks after this, guys. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.